case from the annal of forensic history known as the Blood Trail. This case centers on Graham Backhouse, a seemingly ordinary farmer from Winden Hill Farm in Chipping, England. However, behind the facade of rural tranquility lay a sinister plot driven by financial desperation and greed that culminated in two shocking criminal acts in 1984. The saga began on March 30, 1984, when Graham Backhouse reported to the police a disturbing discovery, a severed lamb's head impaled on his fence post, accompanied by a threatening note. This grim warning was a precursor to more violent events. On April 9, 1984, Backhouse's wife, Margaret, narrowly escaped death when a pipe bomb planted under the driver's seat of their car exploded. Although Margaret survived, the incident escalated the investigation. As forensic experts delved into the case, they uncovered a web of deception and staged evidence. The forensic analysis of letters revealed deliberate grammatical mistake and adaptation linked to the Backhouse. Despite attempts to frame others, such as David Hodgson and neighbor Colin Biddle Taylor, the forensic evidence pointed squarely at Backhouse himself. The climax of this chilling narrative occurred on April 30, 1984, when police responded to an alarm at the Backhouse residence. They discovered Colin Biddle Taylor dead with gunshot wounds and a knife in his hand. Graham Backhouse claimed self-defense, asserting that Biddle Taylor had confessed to planting the car bomb before attacking him. However, forensic blood splatter analysis and the absence of a blood trail contradict Backhouse's version of events, revealing that the crime scene had been staged. Through the meticulous works of forensic experts, including blood pattern analysis, handwriting comparison, and document examination, the truth emerged. Backhouse planned to murder his wife for life insurance money and eliminate a neighbor as a scapegoat was laid bare. He was convicted of the attempted murder of his wife and the murder of Colin Biddle Taylor, receiving 2 life sentences. In this presentation, we will delve into the forensic technique that uncovered the truth and led to Backhouse's conviction. We will explore the motivations behind his action, the sequence of events, and the crucial evidence that exposed his guilt. This case exemplifies the power of forensic science in solving crimes and ensuring justice itself, even when faced with complex and deceptive schemes.
Welcome to the quiet village of Horton in Dorset, southwest England. Here, 44-year-old Graham Backhouse lived with his wife Margaret and their 2 children. In 1979, Graham's father passed away, leaving him Winden Hill, a sheep farm. Even though Graham was a hairdresser by trade, he reluctantly took on the farm, struggling to make it profitable. Derek Robinson, his former neighbor, said that he had to take over the farm, they had no option on the business, and it was pretty obvious he was kind of reluctant, grudging farmer, but it was well known that the farm was not making money. On 30 March 1984, Graham found something horrifying. A severed lamb's head was stuck on his fence post. Placed next to it a note warning a large handwritten letter, "You next." Graham told the police that this was not the first threat he had received. A police officer, Chris Birdwell, said that he told me that he was receiving telephone calls of threatening nature and even threats to kill, as I recall. Graham also mentioned a threatening letter he had received in the mail. The detective superintendent stated, which said words to the effect, "You have ruined my sister's life and I'm going to get you." Less than 2 weeks later, the threats turned into violence. One day, Margaret decided to use Graham's car because hers was having problems. As she turned the key, a bomb went off. Graham, busy in the vineyard, did not hear the explosion or Margaret's screams over the music from his radio. The bomb, made with nitroglycerin and 4,500 shotgun pellets, was under the driver's seat. It injured Margaret severely, but neighbors found her and took her to the hospital, where she eventually recovered. A forensic scientist said that, strictly speaking, it was not a bomb, it was a shortened version of shotgun. It was constructed from galvanized steel pipe 2-inch diameter, quite a thick wall to the pipe. Margaret survived as the force of the bomb went downward due to the strong construction of the driver's seat. Despite this, doctors had to remove over a pound of pellets and shrapnel from her body. The bombing shocked the villagers, making them realize that the threats against Graham Backhouse were real. His former neighbor told that when bombs go off, you gotta take it seriously, and people were thinking that there must be something behind. It was the only possible conclusion that we all reached, that the bomb must have been for Graham Backhouse. But the big question remains, who wanted Graham Backhouse dead and why?
On the same day of the car bomb explosion, which seriously injured Margaret Backhouse, a threatening letter was delivered to the Backhouse's
And the
farm.
message said something to the effect, "Came twice last week, but the pigs were about."
Investigators also examined the note found beside the severed lamb's head. An analysis of that note revealed a possible clue, which is an impression from a circular doodle. The police asked Graham Backhouse to identify all the individuals who may have
He was
wanted to
interviewed
harm
at some
him.
length about who his enemies were, who his ex-girlfriends were, and things of that nature.
Backhouse told police about one possibility, a former quarry worker named David Hodgson. Backhouse said he once had a sexual affair with Hodgson's wife. Hodgson would have had access to explosives and was an electrician who specialized in wiring automobiles.
On the day the explosion took place, this person was in fact out of the country on holiday and had been out of the country for 3 or 4 days beforehand.
When Hodkinson's alibi checked out, police turned their attention to one of Graham Backhouse's neighbor, which is Colin Bedell Taylor. He was a retired engineer, seriously depressed over the death of his 19-year-old son, who died in a car crash 2 years earlier. Bedell Taylor and Backhouse were involved in a bitter land dispute, which they couldn't seem to resolve. Despite the difference between Backhouse and Bedell Taylor, police could not seriously consider him the suspect in the car bombings.
There was no reason to suspect that Mr. Bedell Taylor was in any way, shape or form involved in this incident.
Police had installed an alarm button connecting the Backhouse home directly to the police station. Just 2 weeks later, the alarm sounded. When the police arrived at the farm, they saw a horrific scene of blood and death. Blood was found on the kitchen floor and the chairs had been overturned. At the bottom of the stairs, at the end of the hallway, lay the body of Colin Bedell Taylor. He had been shot twice in the chest and in his right hand firmly clutched a Stanley knife. Backhouse was bleeding with gaping slash wounds on his face and chest. Backhouse told police that Bedell Taylor stopped by to ask how his wife was doing in hospital following the car bombing. Without warning, Bedell Taylor flew into rage, attacked Backhouse with a Stanley knife. Backhouse ran to the hallway, grabbed his shotgun and shot Bedell Taylor in self-defense. The police roped off the farm and called for forensic detective to conduct an examination. As a result of the reconstruction of the case, the police found that Graham Backhouse was the mastermind behind everything that happened. After 2 straight years of crop failures, Graham Backhouse was £50,000 in debt to a local bank and was desperate needs of funds. He planned to kill his wife and collect of her life insurance policies. Fearing police suspicion, Backhouse decided to make his neighbor, Colin Bedell Taylor, as a scapegoat. Bedell Taylor has been shot twice in the chest. To make the shooting to be appear in self-defense, Backhouse slashed himself in the face and chest with a Stanley knife. This case is resolved through the evidence found, especially from the blood trail.
Evidence found in this case is circular blood drops. Blood drops that was found at the crime scene were round. A circular blood drops indicated its drop at the angle of 90 degrees to the ground. Backhouse states that those blood stains were made when he was struggling against the Bedell Taylor attack. If Backhouse was struggling, the blood spatters would have had a more oblique, elongated shape with a main spatter and a satellite spatter nearby. It appears that Backhouse was standing still when he was slashed. Dr. William Kennett, a pathologist, testified the wounds could have been caused by someone else, but Backhouse would have had to stand still there, doing nothing, while his attacker slashed him from shoulder to hip. The next evidence is there is no blood trail. Despite Backhouse's serious injuries, no blood trails were found at the crime scene. Backhouse told the police Bedell Taylor inflicted injuries on his face and chest before he managed to run over to the kitchen to pick up his shotgun. But investigators haven't found any blood trails from the kitchen to the hall. In other words, Backhouse was not bleeding as he moved away from Bedell Taylor. Other evidence found in this case is the absence of blood on shotgun. Backhouse states after Bedell Taylor attacked him, which results in bleeding from the face to the chest, he ran for the gun and shot him. But investigators haven't found any blood over the shotgun. If Backhouse had injuries that profusely bleed, why there was no blood on his shotgun? This means that Backhouse might not be stating the truth. Another evidence found is the bloody hand of Bedell Taylor. When Bedell Taylor's body was discovered, he grabbed a blade in his right hand which was fully wet with blood. His right palm was covered in his own blood, which could only happen after he was shot when he was not holding the knife. If he holds the blade knife, there must be a white blood pattern, which was not the case. This further undermined Backhouse's claim.
And I will continue talk on the evidence found in this case. The first one, chest wound was inconsistent. Backhouse's chest wound was inconsistent with the struggle. Normally, if we get cut, we will draw our body away. Backhouse had no defensive injuries commonly found when a person ends off a knife attack. That means the cut was self-inflicted. In this case, Backhouse got a consistent half-circumference length of the wound on the chest. The wound, which travels almost half the circumference of the chest in a one-to-one confrontation, was inconsistent with how he described the attack. This is due to the fact that the body will withdraw back in an attack. The next evidence that had been found was the doodle or notepad matches the threatening note. When police searched Backhouse's house, they found a notepad. On one of the pages was a circular doodle. The ink doodle found on the Backhouse's notepad was identical to the impression found on the "You Next" note. The whole series of circles quite complicated thing. The impressions found were quite deep, so that if you had a good photograph and you are able to see a good alignment and could see clearly that it came from it, it was exactly the same with the notes. It is a proof that the "You Next" note was written on Graham Backhouse's own notepad. The next evidence is the handwriting on threatening letter and unsigned letter from prison. Another crucial piece of evidence helps seed the case. It came from the letter delivered to the Backhouse farm on the day of the bombing. The forensic detectives want to analyze the glue envelope for saliva, hoping to determine the blood type of the individual who sent the letter, but soon they discover much more. Under the microscope, the fiber found in the envelope matched the fiber found in a brown cardigan sweater owned by Graham Backhouse. Further proof, the Backhouse had mailed the threatening letter to himself. The handwriting analysis matched Backhouse's writing, proving that he authored the threatening letter and was involved in staging the threats. Graham Backhouse's plotting continued from his prison cell. Backhouse's attempt to implicate Biddle Taylor for the pipe explosion in the Volvo car owned by himself. He conned a fellow prisoner into smuggling out an unsigned letter to a local newspaper. The letter implicated Colin Biddle Taylor in the car bombing, but the letter was confiscated and Backhouse's handwriting matched the handwriting on the letter delivered to the farm on the day of the bombing.
Following our review of the case chronology and the evidence discovered at the crime scene, I, Tengku Syafika Badi Tengku Syafi'i, will wrap everything up. Firstly, motive and financial troubles. Graham Backhouse was under severe financial pressure due to significant debts. It is reported that his financial desperation led him to devise a scheme that he believes would address his financial problems. Therefore, Backhouse took out a substantial life insurance policy on his wife, Margaret, shortly before her death. This action indicated a financial motive behind the murder. Second is staged incidents. For example, the car bombing incident was staged by Backhouse to create the impression that he was the target of an assassination attempt. This was intended to divert suspicion and possibly to set up a defense of being a victim rather than an offender. Another part of this fabricated story was when Backhouse claimed that he killed Colin Biddle Taylor in self-defense when Biddle Taylor allegedly attacked Margaret. Then, the forensic evidence that found at the crime scene. Forensic experts analyzed the blood splatter patterns at the crime scene and found that they did not support Backhouse's version of events. The patterns indicated that the attack happened in a manner inconsistent with his alibi. Various physical evidence, including the positioning of bodies, weapons, and blood, contradicted Backhouse's narrative. Next is witness alibi. Alibis from neighbors, friends, and acquaintances painted a picture of Backhouse's financial difficulties and his behavior leading up to the incidents. These alibis further undermined his credibility and supported the prosecution's case. Backhouse's actions and behavior, including the staging of the vehicle bombing and a sudden life insurance policy, were regarded as highly suspect. His behavior during the investigation also raised red flags for the authorities. Legal proceeding. During the trial, the prosecution presented a compelling case that combined forensic evidence, witness alibi, and a clear motive. The defense could not effectively counter the overwhelming evidence against Backhouse. Last but not least is the sentencing. Graham Backhouse was received 2 life sentences for his crimes. The severity of the sentence reflected the premeditated and calculated nature of his actions. The case concluded with the conviction and life imprisonment of Graham Backhouse. The detailed forensic analysis and thorough investigation revealed his elaborate plot, motivated by financial desperation and a desire to cover up his debts. The case underscores the importance of forensic science in criminal investigations, demonstrating how meticulous analysis can dismantle even the most carefully planned deceptions. It also highlights the devastating impact of financial distress when coupled with criminal intent, leading to tragic and irreversible consequences.